Is imagination simply contained in the mind? Or does it tap into an unseen world with messages waiting to be told? There is a place where legends cross over into our world, where strange visions and whispers beckon, and superstition takes hold. Step into the Black Cat's shadow.
I'm your host, Andy.
And I'm Phantom Dark Dave.
And you're listening to the Black Cat Shadow Horror Movie Podcast. So this is our second Halloween-themed episode for this month. Our first part was released last week, and we talked about Rob Zombie movies. We talked about House of a Thousand Corpses and 31. And basically, like, the whole idea behind these Halloween-themed episodes was to pick out movies that were set on Halloween that really give off those Halloween vibes. And we didn't want to necessarily talk about any of the Halloween movies, like from the Halloween franchise, because I feel like every other horror movie podcast is doing that right now. So we wanted to do something to set ourselves apart a little bit. So if you missed out on our first Halloween episode, it's the Rob Zombie one. Go check out the last episode. And just right before that, we had our Universal Monsters podcast extravaganza crossover series, whatever you want to call it. We're having our second one this month, and it's a bunch of podcasts. And so we put out our episode earlier this month called Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. It's the sequel to the Wolfman, because the first go around with the Universal Monsters here on the Black Cat Shadow, we did the Wolfman. So I just wanted to go ahead and do the sequel, so that's what we did. Like I said, there's several other podcasts doing the series as well. There's B Movie Bros. They talked about the sequel to The Invisible Man. There's Paranormal Pativity. He talked about The Mummy's Hand. Okay, so then I think the next is going to be, we got Back in Time. They're doing Dracula's Daughter. And then we have Fright Club, Hope and George over there. They're doing Bride of Frankenstein. And then I think, and last but not least, we have Brian over at Terrible Terror. He is doing the sequel to the Creature from the Black Lagoon. I can't remember the name of it, but he's doing that movie. So definitely stay tuned for those coming up. Check out the ones that have already come out. It's been really fun working with these other podcasts, and maybe through this, people can discover some new podcasts that you didn't know about. So it's a lot of fun, especially during the month of October. So, one thing I did in this month that I was really excited about was I went to go see the new Halloween movie. And I thought it was pretty good. Dave, what did you think of it? You went and saw it too, right?
Oh yeah, I had the seat reserved 2 weeks in advance. I knew this was going to be the best horror movie of the year. I got all my hopes in line. Like, this was going to be the real deal. It was going to finally pull Halloween from the gutter. And I think it sucked. I was so disappointed, man.
Yeah, I remember you telling. I was actually surprised when you told me that, because after I saw it, I was like, oh, Dave would probably like it. Yeah, to each his own. And I know this movie is pretty divisive. I mean, there's people that love it, there's people that hate it. It's one of those, I don't know, it's just one of those movies. So it's interesting to hear other people's opinions on it. So let us know, maybe we'll put out a Twitter poll, and you can let us know what you thought about the new Halloween.
So, Andy, I know something we talk about sometimes on the podcast where we review 80 movies and stuff. I discovered you like a lot of Diet Mountain Dew, and I heard from Randy that you're also a Coke Zero guy. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll drink some Coke Zero.
Yeah. So I don't know if you noticed this or not or whatnot, but I switched the monsters over to all the zero sugars. They're the absolute zeros and the low carbs. Just decided, I was going to cut sugar, and the best way to do it is start with the monsters. And that trend continued. And I've also done the same thing to my sodas. And so now I pretty much just drink water. But when it's time for a soda, like, you go to Wendy's, I don't get a water, but they got Coke
Right.
Zero.
Okay.
And man, I have fallen in love with Coke Zero. I have fallen in love with Coke Zero Cherry. Is just amazing. And so I was like, oh, I totally see where Andy gets this now.
Oh yeah.
Good stuff there. And I know it's not a huge deal, but man, I cut the sugar out and I lost 10 pounds just like that.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So that means I had 10 pounds of Monster sugar just sitting there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely feel a lot better, man. So that's kind of cool. Although I will say my taste buds are pissed,
Oh yeah.
but I'm getting used to it.
Yeah, it takes a little to get used to if you are not used to like diet soda. It has a weird taste, but I think like as far as like diet sodas that are good like gateway sodas for diet sodas is like Diet Mountain Dew, Diet Dr Pepper. Those two
Sure.
they
sure.
taste really close to the original, I think.
Well, I love Coke Zero. Like, it's fine. I have no complaints. But what it's done for the Monster side is Monster's always been my favorite drink just because it tastes amazing and it takes me from 0 to 100 really fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is that redundant? 0 to 100 really fast? Because that means the same thing. 0 to 100 means really fast? Huh. Anyways, what I'm saying is, when you're down or if you're awake, like, let's get monstered up. Like, there was a term, and I know Paranormal Pat knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like, if you need to get to it, you get monstered up, and you desired the taste, you desired the energy level. Like, you were a freak. It was liquid cocaine. It was amazing. Well, now that I've switched it, don't get like when I wake up, it's just somewhere somebody who needs their coffee. I'm like, all right, I need to crack open this, Zero Monster, and I enjoy it. But I don't down them and I don't kill them. And there's no getting monstered up anymore. And I was talking to Ed about this on the last episode I did, where it's like, yeah, man, now I got to bring that crazy from within because I don't have the sugar rush anymore. And it's crazy because when I started doing this, it was a health thing. It's like, I'm just going to cut sugar. And then it started transcending into, man, I'm going to get in shape. This is going to be great, which I wasn't really out of shape, but I wasn't into shape. And so now it's turned into one of those things where it's like, I'm just going to probably wing off these things altogether. Then what are people going to think of me? I'll never get sponsored by Monster if I do that.
Yeah, you're gonna have to find a new trademark.
I was going to be Monster Head in the 30
That's right.
one sequel. Dang. Now I'm just going to be Dickhead. But anyway, it's all good, man. We're definitely not here to talk about the sugar, but we're here to talk about some pretty cool horror movies, though.
Definitely, yeah. So, like I said last episode, this episode we are going to be talking about a couple of horror anthology movies that are based around the holiday of Halloween.
During the spookiest time of the year, there are a few guidelines all ghosts and goblins should follow. Always stay on sidewalks. Never go to a stranger's house. And never go out alone.
And the first one is Trick or Treat. I'm sure most people will probably guess that because that's kind of an easy go-to movie that's kind of become a modern Halloween classic. And then we're also going to take a look at Tales of Halloween. So the cool thing about anthology movies is that you get a lot of different stories within one movie. So it's kind of like you've seen a bunch of movies in an hour and a half or 2 hours. So that's kind of cool. You get a lot of bang for your buck with anthology movies. Dave, are you a big fan of like anthology type movies?
It's kind of weird because I've always said yes, but then when watching them, there's so much to take in with these. So I would say some anthology movies are better than others. But the thing I think you were leaning for with Trick or Treat was Trick or Treat's like the go-to movie now because it just seems so full of Halloween spirit. I would be on the level of saying this is like the Hocus Pocus of Halloween. So like a lot of people go to Hocus Pocus because it's a family Halloween movie and it's just got the entire vibe for it. Well, this is the vibe for the serious horror fans. You know what I mean? Like even watching this when it came out and then turning around and I'm watching it again to review it for this show, I had forgotten so much and I was so impressed with what they were able to squeeze in here because what we'll get into is it covers everything.
Yeah, there's several different plot lines going on at the same time, but they all kind of intermingle, and it's interesting. So, like, I call it an anthology movie, but it's not quite like a traditional anthology. It's one where all the stories are kind of taking place simultaneously, and the story kind of jumps back and forth in time, which I'm not a big fan of. Like Quentin Tarantino likes to do that, especially with like Pulp Fiction. And what was it, like Reservoir Dogs? He kind of did that too. I can't remember now, but
Everything he makes jumps around.
yeah. So I'm not a big fan of that, but that's okay. Now with Trick or Treat, the first time I saw it, it was actually the first time I watched it was on Christmas, like back when it first came out. And I didn't really care for it back then. And I wonder if it was because I watched it like when there was snow outside, and it just didn't fit the time. I don't know, but I wasn't a big fan of it. And then so going around this time, I was like, well, we'll see if my opinion changes. And so I watched it this time, and I do like it. I think it kind of grew on me some. There's especially one of the stories that really clicked with me. But anyway, so Trick or Treat is currently streaming on Amazon. You can rent it for $2.99. That's the HD version. So that's how I was able to watch it. It's not currently like streaming on any free sites or Netflix or Amazon Prime or anything like that, unfortunately. But it kind of opens up and it's talking about. I think it's interesting how it starts out. It's starting out talking about follow the traditions of Halloween or else, something bad is going to happen. And there's a couple that's coming home from a Halloween party. The husband, he's all into Halloween. He loves it. And the wife hates it. And so it's interesting, and so she really doesn't care about Halloween. She doesn't really keep the rules of Halloween. She'll blow out the jack-o'-lantern before the night's over. Or I guess you're supposed to leave it lit or something like that. Trouble kind of comes from that for them. And I liked it at the very beginning. It's kind of started off with one of those old Halloween safety videos. I thought that was kind of cool. Kind of got that retro vibe in there. I think people are really familiar with Sam. Sam is like the main character that people take away from this movie. He's like this little, almost like a Tim Burton type character to me. He's like a very cartoonish. He's got like the burlap sack over his head, and he's got orange PJs on. He's like short, and he has a sucker that he attacks people with. What do you think of Sam, Dave?
Yeah, he's iconic, man. I think he's made his way into that same list as Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, Leatherface. You usually see him pop up and it's the guy from Trick or Treat. And he earns the right as far as his look and the things he's able to accomplish in the movie. As we see him, he gets himself in some pretty outstanding situations and he does some damage. But I feel like just because how different he is, it really makes him stand out.
Yeah, I feel like he could fit into Nightmare Before Christmas or something like that,
Is that because he's small?
Maybe. And also he has the button eyes and I think just the colors. One of the things that stood out to me was the brutal killings. It was pretty gory. I think that this movie definitely, you can tell it has a bigger budget. The way they shoot it, you can tell it's the cinematography is good. The set pieces are well designed. The special effects are good. All that kind of stuff. The acting is well done. You see a lot of familiar faces within the cast. You got Anna Paquin, Dylan Baker, which he was the trying to remember now who he was. I think he was the dad that ended up being a serial killer.
Yeah, he was awesome.
I recognize him from some other stuff, but I can't quite remember what he was in. Then Rochelle Aytes, Aytes. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but I recognize her from Criminal Minds. Tamo Pinnickett? Man, these people have some weird names, but he's from Battlestar Galactica. I recognize him. Leslie Bibb, she's been in lots of things. I can't say right off the top of my head what she was in. Do you know what she was in, Dave?
I did not research her.
Okay. And then Brian Cox. He was Mr. Krieg. And I recognize him from Bourne Ultimatum, the Bourne movies. He was a CIA person or whatever. But he's been in lots of other movies too. He was Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter from 1986.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Really?
That's him, yeah.
Wow.
I was surprised. I was looking at his
Brian
filmography.
Cox, man, because I remember that 1989 movie, but I had no idea it was him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember him from Super Troopers and X-Men 2. He was Stryker.
That's right, yeah.
Huh. Oh, good for him.
But yeah, you can tell the people behind this movie really love Halloween. You could tell this is like a passion project.
Yeah, Warner Brothers definitely spent a lot of money in this movie, a lot of good production value, and you can see it, man. Like you said, the sets are amazing. I could not imagine the amount of time it took to get as detailed as they are. You look at this and you're like, man, I wish I could decorate like Halloween for these people. You know, even the worst one is like better than what I can do.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, and it's funny, like, I went and saw Goosebumps too, and that was one of the things that I noticed. It's not really a spoiler or anything, but a lot of the houses in like the neighborhood where the movie's set, everybody has like really cool Halloween decorations, like professional, like animatronic stuff. I'm like,
dang.
It's like, anyway, so I thought that was funny. Like, like you said, like all the, like in these movies, the Halloween decorations that people put up are like not necessarily realistic.
The only person I've ever seen compete with that is S.A. Bradley from Hellbent for Horror. He sent me a video once of his Halloween decorations at his house. And dude, I was blown away. Like it looked like you were inside of Spencer's or Spirit Halloween. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see. This is going to be full of spoilers. You know, I think we're just going to have to, talk about everything if we want to really talk about this movie, dig into it and talk about what we like about it. Dave, you want to start off?
So let's talk about the opening scene. You have Emma and her husband Henry. Like you said, they came home from what looks like a pretty crazy evening. And they mention, oh, leave the pumpkin lit. And she's like, why? I'm lit. You're lit. And he's like, it's just tradition. And she's like, here's a tradition. And she blows it out. And I was like, oh, man. But it's so weird because it's almost like a role reversal. Not in the sense that, a woman can't put all the decorations up. I would just assume the man would be like, honey, it's been a long evening. You go inside and get comfortable. I'm going to put this stuff up. But the funny thing that I did catch on was the little sensual talk. It's like, go ahead, go inside, put the tape in. And I was like, that sounds kind of kinky. And then he goes inside and there's a tape he pulls out. And I forgot what it said, but it said something like nature video or something completely okay, I'm going to believe that. And then he puts the tape in and she's dragging all the decorations down. She's bumping into him and she's scaring herself. And like you said, it's completely obvious that she doesn't really care about Halloween. She's only doing it for him. And it looks like we have an unseen killer who's kind of gazing upon what she's doing. And she ends up getting herself into a mess of trouble because as she's bad-mouthing and destroying some of this stuff and trying to throw it around, Andy, she gets killed.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal too, like I was saying. Yeah, she gets like hacked to pieces and she becomes part of the Halloween decorations.
Yeah, and her husband is upstairs and he's passed out. He was in bed waiting, although he still had part of his costume on. So I think these people were on a whole nother level. But yeah, he wakes back up and you just hear the moaning and groaning of the TV and everything. And he reaches over. She's not there. He goes outside to see where she is. And most of the decorations are still up. And as he starts to gaze around, you kind of see her arm dangling from the tree. But he doesn't really catch on to what it is. He even touches it or bumps into it. And he's like, huh. But then he turns around and notices, just like you said, she's like almost like crucifixed. Like she's mounted up on this prop and she's become this decoration. And it's brutal because she has something jammed in her mouth.
Just an example of what happens when you don't follow the rules.
Shouldn't have blew the jack-o'-lantern out, man.
And I liked how they kept it a mystery about like who killed her. Like it didn't really show Sam right off the bat.
Right. It's a very slow buildup and even to a reveal at the end. And it's all minimal, but it's done so well.
And this is where we get the rewind to the earlier in that night. Yeah. So in the next one we get the kid that's like smashing pumpkins and, just causing a lot of trouble. And he ends up going to his teacher's house and he's like, oh, hi, and the teacher's like, come here, is like sitting him down and like talking to him. Yeah, I think this was kind of a funny scene. You get the idea that Mr. Wilkins, the teacher, he's has some sinister motives, right? Like right off the bat.
Yeah, there's something not right about him, and you don't really know which way you're supposed to feel. You're like, is he just coming off creepy and it's supposed to trick me? Or is there something about him that's, like you said, like truly sinister? And at first, it just seems like he's almost pedophile-y in a way. Like not overly done, but there's just something unsettling about him.
Yeah. And he's like, he's got that knife that he pulls out of the pumpkin and he's like, oh, don't worry, this isn't for you. Like, the kid kind of gets a little freaked out, but then, like, after he eats his candy, he starts getting sick, and the teacher's like, oh, you should always check your candy. And I know, this movie, as we kind of get into just even these first couple of scenes, like, this movie is really kind of mean-spirited. Like, it's pretty, like I said, it's pretty brutal, violent movie.
Well, it's almost like it's teaching a lesson, like follow the rules of Halloween or you die. That's pretty much what I got out of it.
Yeah. And I was wondering, so Mr. Wilkins, he's apparently a serial killer, and his son is wanting him to, like, carve a pumpkin with him. And I like the twist there because I was wondering, his son sees him doing some pretty weird things. Does his son know that he's a killer? And then, as it goes on, in the next scene, you find out, the son knows.
Yeah, because he moves a sheet and there's like a grave that's dug and you're like, oh, what's in the grave? And he jumps down in there and then you start to hear voices and the body is alive. It starts moving. And so he's kicking it and his son's yelling. And so he's trying to not really let his son know, but he's not doing the best job of hiding it because he's rustling around to the point where he takes his shovel and he's like swinging it down and hitting it. And he catches the attention of his neighbor, Mr. Krieg, right? And you could tell that's Brian Cox, and he's just a bitter old man. And he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, the septic tank broke. And he's like, is that what that smell is? And he's like, yep, that's definitely what that smell is. He's like, it smells like a dead whore or something.
Yeah.
And it was just really humorous to me. And his son just will not for the life just stop yelling, I want to carve a pumpkin. And he's like, okay, we'll do it. And he's like, but you got to help me with the eyes. He's like, I said we would do it. And I was thinking the whole time, like, he is going to kill his son.
Yeah. And then we kind of get that lead up to that. Like, they go down to the basement where they're going to carve their pumpkin. You find out that, no, it's, they're going to, like, they have, like, a severed head that they're going to carve out.
Yeah, it's that vandal's head, man, the kid that he poisoned. And one scene that's really cool is whenever he walks through his house, you see him pass by a whole bunch of chemicals where he was making the stuff to put inside the candy bars.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
You were just like, wow, it's Breaking Bad, but worse, all over again. So the next scene's kind of cool. It switches over to some kids who are trick-or-treating. You have Macy, Sarah, Chip, and I think Schrader was his name. It's a cool name. And they meet up with Rhonda, who truly loves Halloween. She's all about it. And they, you can tell Schrader's putting the moves on her, but you feel like, would he really hit on her? And that's not a judgmental call. It just feels kind of shady. And so he's being extra sweet her. I was getting a little bit of the Tommy Ross, Carrie White vibe. I'm like, what's going on here? And so they lure her into the group, and Macy takes them to this, I think it's like a local rock quarry. It's a real creepy scene. It's really awesome, but she starts to tell an urban legend of the Halloween school bus massacre. And I thought of you, Andy. I was like, oh, here we go, legends. But the cool thing is they do the legend in a flashback sequence where there's a bus driver and he's driving the school bus. And apparently there's 8 kids on this bus who purposely get separated from everybody else because they're mentally challenged or they have some disorders or something. I guess to the point where it's pretty much got the parents not wanting them anymore, because we learned that the parents have paid the bus driver to get rid of their kids permanently, I guess is the best way to say it. And so, Lord and behold, on Halloween, he's driving them. They're all in their costumes. And he, I got that whole Nightmare on Elm Street 2 vibe. We're like, oh, the bus is going the wrong way. You passed your turn. You missed it. But one of the kids notices what's going on. And then you see like all the kids are chained up to their seats. I was like, what? It's a prison bus? What's going on? And then you realize that, yeah, he's going to go through with it. And things don't really work out to the extent that you think they're going to do, because you don't know what he's going to drive the bus out to the middle of nowhere and do what. and one of the kids breaks loose, and he's freaking out. And he's like, home, home, home. And he ends up taking control of the bus, and they go right off a cliff and crash into the water to where it actually becomes the rock quarry where they're at right now. And so you begin to wonder, is this just something they're doing to scare Rhonda, or what's going to happen? And man, this whole scene, Andy, we can get into it, but it takes a turn for the worst.
Yeah, I was actually surprised where this one went. But this is probably my favorite story in this movie. I really liked following the kids. You know, this one felt the most like Halloween to me, like, because it's like kids. You know, they're out on Halloween night. They're like they're trick or treating, but then they also want to like go investigate this like local legend. But I thought it was funny, like while they were trick or treating, they would go to some houses and run into some of their teachers. And there was the one teacher that she was like drunk, and she was having a party where the kids didn't really understand what was going on.
Yeah, there was some grinding going on in the background.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny, Andy, because she's all like, would you like a drink? And then one of the kids like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, what?
But yeah, these kids are seeing their teachers as they really are. And I think it's kind of also kind of a cool thought, just about Halloween in general, how, Halloween is about wearing costumes to be someone else, but really it just lets us be who we really are.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, so I just thought I had it while I was watching this.
Unless you're a serial killer, then just don't be around me.
But yeah, I think the reason why I liked the kid's story the best was because Halloween was the best for me when I was a kid. That's when I had the most fun during Halloween. I don't know. Yeah. I think as a kid, I always wanted to go on an adventure like this. Like the Goonies, movies like that. Just like, I want to like find a treasure map and go on an adventure. It's just, I think it's just really like clicked with me, this whole story.
Did you sit in front of the TV screen? You're like, why not me?
Yeah, no.
Well, something that's cool is as the scene progresses, we learn that the trick-or-treaters want to offer 8 jack-o'-lanterns as tribute to the dead children. And it starts to turn into a prank on Rhonda because they want to pose as zombies and scare her.
Yeah, and this first go-around when the kids were playing their prank, and I was like, well, is this... I wasn't quite sure because, if this was actually the kids dressing up or if this was actually like some kind of ghosts or zombies, because their costumes look pretty good. I mean, for just some kids that whipped something up for a prank, I mean, these were some pretty high quality masks that they were wearing and costumes. I mean,
oh yeah, they even went as far as having the chains on them.
Yeah.
You could hear them rustling around and stuff. So, but it goes wrong, Andy, because they accomplished their goal. They scared the daylights out of her, but she falls down, man, and she hits her head. She gets knocked out.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, her revenge is pretty brutal too, and she doesn't take any prisoners. Like Rhonda, the nerdy girl, the dork girl, whatever, she ends up like killing all of the other kids. Like she doesn't have any mercy on any of them. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, because I think what had happened was one of the lanterns got kicked into the water, and that's what brought the actual zombie kids back to life when they came up out of the water,
Okay.
And yeah, she left them to die. They were like, help us, they're coming, this. And for a second, you're wondering, does she just think this is another prank, And then you start to see a look in her eye, like her face. She does a great job. And she's like, no, she's pretty much just like, the hell with you. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh.
Yeah, she just leaves him down there.
She hits that elevator and she's out of there, man. And the cool thing is, something we've already mentioned before, but when she's leaving, you see Sam walking by. He's always popping up in the background, interweaving all these stories. It's great. Yeah,
he's always like in the background. Then towards the end, he gets kind of his own spotlight here towards the end. Yeah, so, the next one, we see a group of girls trying on Halloween costumes. Of course, this is kind of like, it goes back and forth between stories, but the next set of characters are these girls that are trying on Halloween costumes. And there's one that's reluctant to go out with her friends or her sister. It sounds like they're sisters, right?
Yeah, a pair of them are. Yes.
Yeah. So she's kind of reluctant, like she's talking about, this her first time kind of thing, And so you get the idea they're talking about like sex and, they want to meet guys and they want to meet dates. And so it just seems like typical group of girls that are going for a girls' night out. And so, and it's funny because like, there's definitely a twist with these women and there's hints throughout the story. Like they say like, so Anna Paquin, she's like the youngest girl, seems like that's kind of like not sure about going out, and she feels like she's just kind of getting dragged along. But when she's in with the dressing room trying on her Halloween outfit, her sister says, "Come on out, or we'll huff and we'll puff and we'll blow your house down." So that was kind of a nice little hint at what's to come, or like about who they are. I like that.
Yeah, because I thought first watch, oh, that's just a reference when she comes out, because she comes out as Little Red Riding Hood. I'm like, oh, okay, haha, I get it. But no, man, the references keep coming along, and you even hear references like, oh, she was always the runt of the litter.
Yeah, I picked up on that too this time.
And something that's cool, you mentioned your favorite story was the last one. This one was my favorite because I didn't pick up on those originally, and I didn't see this coming at all. And I thought this scene that we're about to get into was when the effects really escalated up, and they were practically awesome.
So the girls, they do end up finding dates. Obviously they're all very attractive women, and so they don't have any problem there. And so they go to the woods to have this party in the woods. But Anna Paquin, her character, she is still trying to find the right guy. She just can't find the right guy. And then she ends up finding this dark, mysterious stranger, and that ends up being Mr. Wilkins.
Yeah, it totally blew my mind. So we had seen this character before in the movie, but we weren't really sure what his purpose was, and we're led to believe he's a vampire because he's seductive, he's all in dark clothes, he shows fangs, he stalks women, he finds Anna Paquin, he goes to seductively bite her or kiss her on the neck, and then next scene we just see Anna Paquin's character, who's named Lori, which I love, like, oh, innocent virgin, Lori, Halloween. And she comes walking into the party, and she doesn't have a date, but she has blood on her. And you're thinking, oh no, did she turn into a vampire? Like, that's the first thing I thought, is she going to go crazy? But then a body falls out of the tree, and it's wrapped up in her Red Riding Hood suit. That's her Red Riding Hood, that's funny to say. And they're thinking, well, okay, it's not her. And when they unmask, it's the mask, it's the dark hooded figure or whatever. And when they unmask him, it's Mr. Wilkins. And dude, that right there just threw me back. I was like, whoa. And it makes sense because in the beginning, his son was like, I want to go with you to the parade. And he's like, no, I have a date. Like, no, he's a stalker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was amazing. And then as we get into it, we start to see the women. I guess it's Halloween, Andy, so we get to see them for who they really are.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a nice little twist. It was kind of a reversal on the typical werewolf story or whatever. You expect like the guys to be werewolves and attack the women, but this time it's the women that are the predators and seeking out their prey, and it's these guys that they find. And yeah, so we end up, so we get some pretty cool transformation scenes here where they start transforming into werewolves, and yeah, I mean it was pretty cool.
And then you see all the dead bodies laying everywhere, and then right there on a log, Sam's just sitting there watching the feast.
Yeah. But yeah, and then I think the next one is the Mr. Krieg segment. And so and we actually see like part of this earlier on in the movie. Like I said, this movie kind of jumps back and forth in time. So this all kind of happens earlier on in the timeline, really. But this is the last segment that we see, or the last event that we see. And so we have Mr. Krieg. He's like the old crotchety neighbor. He doesn't celebrate Halloween. His lights are all turned off. He doesn't, want to have anything to do with the kids. And we find out that he is the bus driver. And that was kind of a nice little twist. It kind of wraps up the whole kids story because they didn't know what happened to the bus driver because, the legend goes he just disappeared or whatever. But we found out that Mr. Krieg is the bus driver, and he has an encounter with Sam, pretty crazy. I mean, it's Sam is like just going after him full force. And we get to see what's under that burlap sack. So that was pretty cool. Really cool effects with Sam, I thought.
Yeah, it had that Satan's little helper look where his head's almost like a pumpkin and it was kind of carved. It was pretty dark, and it was one of those situations where it's not a letdown, because in some movies, like, oh, the mask looks so awesome, the killer, and then they unmask and you're like, well, I'm not afraid anymore, or, oh, put the mask back on. In this sequence, it could have went either way. He had a really cool, iconic look with the burlap sack, very Nightmare, I'll get host for that, Friday the 13th Part 2. But then when he took it off, he was this own kind of monster, and I was like, man, he's a pumpkin monster. That's really cool.
Yeah, so, and, this one, it was pretty suspenseful, because you have this guy that's locked he's in his house, and he realizes that there's somebody else in his house, and it's this little creature that's chasing him around, trying to attack him and kill him. And it seems like, doesn't he get what happens? Like, Sam kind of like goes away, so you think that he's survived. You think that Mr. Krieg has survived. It reminds me of A Christmas Carol, because after his encounter with Sam, he actually wants to like give candy to the kids. So when the next trick-or-treaters come to his door, he's like, oh yeah, here's candy, and he starts giving it to the kids. But then he takes a look at the kids, and it's the kids from the bus.
Yeah, so he's fighting off Sam the whole time, and he offers Sam candy, and that's what does it. Sam accepts it, and it's like, okay, you're following the rules, I'll leave you alone now. And of course, at this point, I mean, you're so lucky, dude. Sam was about to kill you. I mean, Sam even has a candy bar with a razor in it, and he's stabbing him. It's brutal. It's like some prison stuff. But, yep. I thought at that point it was over. We see the photograph burning in the fireplace, and it reveals that he's the bus driver. And that was another scene that blew me back. I was like, what? That's amazing writing. I love it. Hashtag jealous. And then, like you said, you just see him again, and he's all bandaged up and wrapped up like an old broken man. And the first set of kids are normal trick-or-treaters, and they're like, I like your mummy costume. And I was like, ha. Yeah. Awesome. And then, the next set of kids come by, and, oh, look, there's 8 of them, and those costumes look really familiar. And there is no happy ending for Mr. Creed.
No. So all in all, I think that, all the stories get wrapped up nicely. I really like that. And I think I definitely liked this movie better the second time. I think I just wasn't like as engaged the first time I saw this movie. I missed a lot of those details. I think it's definitely a good Halloween themed movie for adults. I think, like you said, this one's more for the hardcore horror fans. Like Hocus Pocus is more for like mainstream movie fans for like a Halloween movie. This is one where there's something for everyone. If you like serial killers, if you like monsters, if you like ghosts, or if you just like Sam. It's a great quality made Halloween movie.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
Did this get a theatrical release? Do you know?
I believe it did.
Okay. Because I didn't watch this until it was like on Netflix or something like that.
I actually have the DVD, so it was easy for me to go, oh, I guess I'll whip this out again.
But yeah, definitely, I would say recommend checking it out if you've never seen it. It's hard to imagine like a horror movie fan that has not seen Trick or Treat. But if for some reason you haven't, it's definitely worthwhile.
Every year on Halloween, this town goes batshit crazy.
Trick or Treat. So we've got the cream of the crop Halloween movies, and then you take a look at Tales of Halloween. It's definitely like lower quality. You can tell like right off the bat with like the opening credits. It kind of has like some CG stuff going on, and it kind of looks a little cheesy. Kind of has a cheap feel. That's what I thought anyway.
I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because it was so different. It was unique, and it was its own vibe. Mm. And though it may a little cheesy there, but I think cheesy on purpose. And it kind of lets you know what you're getting into. Like, oh, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah. So Tales of Halloween, it doesn't really have like this one doesn't really have like a wraparound story. It's just like separate stories, but they're all like told separately. They're not really like intertwined like they were in Trick or Treat.
I don't know. I felt like they did blend, not to the point of Trick or Treat was with, like you said, there's no giant wraparound story, but I felt like there was some crossover characters.
Oh yeah, definitely. Right off the bat, like at the very beginning and during the beginning credits, we have our radio DJ that's talking about Halloween, and it's none other than Adrienne Barbeau, which is a nice little Easter egg there. So for me, this is actually my second watch on this one too. I didn't really remember anything from my first time watching it. The only thing that I really remembered was the killer pumpkin. I think that was it.
Oh, really? Okay. I'll tell you the story that when we get there, which one stood out to me, where I was like, this is the only thing I remember from this movie, but it's for a reason.
But yeah, this has 10 stories in it. I was like, wow. Like when I saw that, I was like, wow, 10, that's crazy. But I mean, they all fit together nicely, and it's not like a 3-hour long movie. They're all pretty short.
Yeah, it works.
So yeah, we have our first story. It's Sweet Tooth. This one was a pretty cool little like ghost story / kind of gory type segment.
You get more of your, mythology and urban legends.
Yeah, but this movie, it had kind of a little bit cheesier feel to it. I don't know, or more like campy feel to it, I guess, than like Tales of Halloween.
Oh, there you campy.
Yeah.
Yes, this movie's totally campy. That's a great word.
Yeah.
Why was Bruce Campbell not in this movie?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I would totally expect him to be in this one. So Sweet Tooth, it's basically, you have the setup is you have a babysitter. She's with the kid that she's watching, and he is going through eating all of his Halloween candy. And then her boyfriend shows up, and he's hanging out too. And I think he like wants the kid's candy or something. So he like tells him this ghost story to kind of freak him out. There was a kid that his parents will let him go trick-or-treating, but when it came home, they would take his candy. They would not let him eat any candy. And so like one Halloween, he snuck downstairs after he went to sleep to see what they did with the candy, and his parents would eat all the candy.
Yeah, not like innocently eat. Like they were Lady and the Tramp candy style. Man, they were, I'll put one into the candy bar in my mouth and you receive the other one. And did you catch who the parents were? It was amazing.
Well, Caroline Williams.
Caroline Williams was Miss Baker. Did you recognize the guy?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you're going to love it. Mr. Baker was Robert Ruster from A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Okay.
He was the best friend Grady.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
And so think about it. The parents were both Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Oh, okay.
How cool is that?
Yeah, I totally didn't recognize the dad, but yeah, now I know who you're talking about now. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
You didn't recognize him without those short gym shorts. But it was so cool seeing them again, and their dynamic was great. It was, like you said, it was corny, it was campy, it was fun, until he comes downstairs.
Yeah, so he sees what his parents are doing, and he gets really mad. So this kid ends up killing his parents.
He goes Michael Myers on him, man.
Yeah, and so then he starts eating his candy that they haven't eaten yet. He just eats it all up, but the problem is he wants more candy. And so he gets the idea, he's just gonna dig out the candy that they've eaten already. So we get some pretty impressive gore effects in this little short story.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so that's kind of the story. Like the ghost story is you leave candy out for this ghost, or else he will take your candy that you've already eaten if you don't give him any.
Right.
And it turns out that the story is true, and so the babysitter and her boyfriend, they
didn't share.
No, they didn't share, and they faced the consequences. But the kids shared. Did you see the name on the candy bar?
Was it Carpenter?
Yeah, it was Carpenter.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, and then even the effects of the ghost were pretty cool. Like the kid, he kind of looked like a troll or something. I don't know. But it was kind of cool effects, I thought. The next one is
The Night Billy Raised Hell.
Yeah, I thought this one was really funny. I thought this thing was hilarious. So this one you have almost the same setup. You have this little kid. His sister is having to take this little kid trick-or-treating, and her boyfriend's along with them too. And they convince the little kid to egg this guy's house because he never decorates for Halloween. He never participates in Halloween. And so the kid goes to throw an egg, and the guy comes out of his house, and you can tell he's not like a normal human. There were so many cameos. I was like trying to write down the cameos as they would appear.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm just gonna have to like while we're talking. I'm just going to have to look them up because there's so many cameos. Like, I didn't want to write them all down. The guy's house that the kid that Billy tried to egg was Mr. Abaddon and is played by Barry Bostwick.
Okay.
So he's been in, off the top of my head, I don't really know all the things, but he's a recognizable face. But the makeup that he has is pretty cool. You know, he kind of looks like the devil. You know, when he takes his hat off, he's got little horns and stuff. And he takes Billy and he's like, you know what, Billy, I'm going to show you a real Halloween prank. We see these scenes of Mr. Abaddon and Billy in his devil costume walking around doing like pranks to people, trick-or-treating and stuff. And it was kind of cool to see some of the cameos while they were out walking. It was, let's see, we saw, Felissa Rose for one.
Yep, I saw her. Thought that was cool.
She's not credited. That's weird. I think that was the only one that I really recognized. But, you know, so they end up like stopping somebody driving down the road and they steal their car and, you know, they graffiti people's houses and just do all these kind of crazy things to people. The guy, Mr. Abaddon, he gets Billy to do all these crazy things, or so it would appear. And then at the end of the night, Mr. Abaddon and Billy go back to his house and we see that Billy's actually tied up inside the house. This whole time it wasn't Billy, it was some little short demon, I guess, or something.
Spawn of Satan.
Yeah. Who does make an appearance later on in the movie. So you're right, like these stories do kind of intertwine a little bit. And so Billy, he's like, I thought you were going to show me a prank. And Mr. Abaddon's like, oh, you're going to see a prank. Just you can run along home now. And he goes outside and the police are like surrounding him. But then like it goes black and you hear gunshots. Does that mean that they like shot?
I think they emphasized that they took him down, man. Because you got to understand the police are super aggressive on this kid because it looks like he went on a murder spree. He was running people over with his car. He was chopping heads up, bashing skulls in. I mean, doing anything and everything to everyone. It was amazing to see this body count in a matter of 10 or 15 minutes. But yeah, you could see why they were like, take no prisoners. And it just makes you wonder what happened. Like, did he reach for his candy bar and they shot him? What's really going on?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so that was a pretty funny segment, I thought. And I think that's what this movie really has going for is its sense of humor. I think that's one of the things that really elevates it.
Next, we're going to get into one that I really love. This one might be my favorite one. This one's called Trick. And it basically has a whole bunch of adults sitting around watching Night of the Living Dead, which is always a good time. And you get that they're handing out candy to trick-or-treaters and they're taking turns and they're drinking and having a good time. And they're kind of like, doorbell rings, it's your turn. Oh, man, it's your turn. And one of the guys is named Nelson, and he's completely drunk, right? And he goes and he opens a door and he's offering drink to the mom of the kid who's trick-or-treating and everything. And there's a scene where a witch comes up and she stabs him. Like, this guy gets brutally stabbed and you're thinking, what? Like, what's happening? Why did he get stabbed? And then the girl Maria's there and she goes and starts freaking out and they're all like, let's get him. Let's call the police. And she's like, are you crazy? Let me just get the car. And right there, you're like, okay, that's bad writing. And so she goes outside to get the car, and when she's standing there, she gets her Achilles tendon cut from under the car. And when she falls down, there's a kid who slides out from under the car, and then all the kids start coming out, start circling around her, and they just start hacking away.
Yeah, this segment was pretty intense. Like those kids were scary. Like they weren't like the kids themselves were not scary, but I think just what they were doing was
like a raging Children from the Corn, man.
Yeah.
And then, back in the house, the character James, who was clearly a stoner the whole time he's on the bong, he goes into another room and there's a girl there with, I think it's led to believe it's a lighter and some hairspray because she sprays it. You hear the aerosol can, it lights his face on fire. He falls down, and then add insult to injury, she like feeds him rat poison and then tapes his mouth shut. And then kind of like the last of the friends is Caitlin, and she runs away. She's hiding in a room, and she pulls her phone out, and you're like, damn right, call the police. But then she goes through, and she starts looking at her pictures, and then you start to notice, oh, these are bad people, because in all these pictures, they're torturing and killing kids. And that totally brings justice to all the comments they were making earlier, is they're talking really bad and really naughty about these kids. And so she's deleting all these pictures before she calls the cops because she doesn't want to get in trouble. But then that's when the room she hides in turns out it looks like a redone garage, but the room had like white sheets everywhere. It's their torture room. And so when they turn the light on and go in there, it's clear as day. She's hiding in the corner, and one of the girls is taped on the table or tied down, and they come and let her out, and it looks like her eye's been removed. And so the kids are like, oh, well, we'll let her finish her off. And then that kid gets a hatchet and boom, right into the head.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool twist, like that the adults were actually like killers, and I didn't see that coming. I was like, wow, that took me totally by surprise. I like that a lot.
Heck yeah. And you want to talk about all of the cameos in this movie. You know, I have a place in my heart for Tiffany Shapis. So having her as Maria is in here is awesome. Because, man, I've seen Tiffany way back in the day. She comes from Romeo and Juliet. You know, it was her first movie. She did Terra Firma. She was in Citizen Toxie. She was in Bloody Murder 2, like tons of movies. She's worked with our buddy Rolf Konevsky, who we've had on the podcast, because she was in The Black Room, and she was also in Nightmare Man. So her list is amazing, and she's still doing movies to this day. Here's some trivia. Did you know that she competed in ABC's The Death 2, and I actually had to go against her?
Oh, really?
For the letter M.
Oh, wow.
She didn't win. I didn't win, but it was cool to know that I was in the same running, so that was fun.
Yeah, that's interesting, yeah.
And then Nelson, who was the first guy to get killed, he was also in like Terra Firma, Citizen Toxie. And so you're thinking, this is cool to see them reconnect after all these years. But something you might appreciate, if you're like Charles Band, he actually played, you know, Killjoy, the clown, Killjoy.
Oh, yeah.
He was Killjoy in part 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I really like this segment a lot because you don't see it coming, and then the kids are equally as brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we get to our next segment called The Week in the Wicked. This is just kind of a good old revenge story. You know, we have, it's kind of like an inner city kind of scene, and you have these three thugs, or, you know, street toughs. Yeah. Yeah. You got these three punks that are kind of terrorize people. It's a woman and then two guys, and it's like the woman's kind of like the ringleader, it seems like. So they're kind of terrorizing this guy, and then this other guy walks in and interrupts them, and he's wearing this really strange costume. It's like this like homemade devil costume, but he has like these big horns or something.
I thought he was straight out of one of those role-playing board games or something. You would create your own costume. Oh, yeah. I was like, okay, A for effort.
Yes. He gets their attention, and they walk up to him, and they're just kind of like, whatever, you know, what's this guy supposed to be? And then he like hands her this drawing of it kind of looks like a demon, or it kind of looks like what he's trying to dress up like, and he says these words, and then she drops the paper, and he just starts running away, and so they start running after him and chasing him, but the punks are all on bicycles, and he's just running away. So you're wondering what's happening. Why did this guy provoke these punks to chase him? And so he's running, and finally they corner him in this little alleyway, and then we get the scene where it shows him as a kid, and in the same alleyway there was this motorhome, and it was on fire, and his parents were actually in the motorhome, and they got killed, and it's these punks. When he was a kid and when these punks were kids, I guess they all grew up in the same neighborhood, and so these punks had actually killed his parents. And
it's pretty dark, man.
Yeah, yeah. That's when the punks realize who he is. And so the woman's like, oh, you know, I guess this is fitting that we're going to kill you in the same place where we killed your parents. But then it turns out that this whole thing was like this elaborate ritual to summon this demon so this kid could get revenge on the people that murdered his parents.
Yeah, he went as far as following the instructions of how to do it, where he carved something in his forehead. And it's like when you write the name in flesh and you do this and this, he will appear on Halloween night. And so you just think about, like, man, the steps that this kid has taken to get to this point, I hope it works.
Yeah, I mean, those thugs, man, those punks, especially the woman, she was really mean. Like, they did a really good job with their acting on that.
Did you recognize any of the characters in this one? mainly the main kid. They call him the Stranger. He was the one whose parents got torched.
No, I didn't recognize him.
His name is really hard to pronounce. It's Keir Gilchrist or something, but he's from It Follows. Which
Okay.
I love that movie to
Yeah.
death.
Cool. Yeah. It was a good revenge story. And let's see. And then the next one, we have a lot of cameos in this next one. This next one is called Grim Grinning Ghost.
Little tongue twister.
Yeah. And we have a Halloween party that you would probably love to be at because Lynn Shay's there, Mick Garris, Lisa Marie, Alex Esso, who starred in Starry Eyes, and Barbara Crampton. They're all at the same party. So that's kind of cool.
You're leaving one out.
Oh, did I?
Did you recognize Sherlock Holmes?
No, I didn't.
That was Stuart Gordon.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Like, you're right, I want to be at this party. Of course, any party that Barbara Crampton's at, I would love to be there. Just saying.
So, yeah, we get this little party where they're talking about, Lynn Shay's telling this ghost story about, I forget what the name is, but,
her name was Mary Bailey.
yeah, as Lynn Shay was talking about, Halloween is the night where we dress up to disguise ourselves from ghosts. Ghosts walk around on Halloween night, and some don't want to be seen. So the ghost of Mary Bailey, if you see her, she'll cut out your eyes or something like that. Was that?
Yep. Yeah, don't look at her.
Yeah, so that's the setup, and Lynn Shay is Alex Esso's mother in this one. And so Alex has to go home, drive home at this point, but her car breaks down on the way home, and she gets out and starts walking home, and then she hears footsteps behind her, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the way that this is shot because it shows her walking down the street, and the focus is on her, but in the background you can see somebody behind her, but it's like a soft focus. You can't really like see the person behind her, but you can see the the silhouette. I thought that was shot really well. I like that.
Yeah, it was awesome. Good photography.
But yeah, I thought this was a really spooky segment. I liked it a lot. It's one of those just good old ghost stories. What'd you think of this one?
I liked it. It was, I think, the shortest one of all of them. Yeah, it was the shortest one of all of them, but the cameos, the way it was shot, I even think it was creative where her car breaks down and she lifts up the hood and she's using her phone as a light because that's what we would all do. And she sets her phone down and she has a cigarette, and then when she does something, she has to slam the hood, and she slams it right on her phone and breaks the screen and destroys the phone. And at that point, you can't call for help. And I gotta say, man, she handled it well. Like, I would have let out some verbiage.
Yeah. I mean, because you never realize how much you use your phone when you don't have it anymore, when you can't use it.
Right.
So then that kind of leads into our next segment, which is called Ding Dong. And honestly,
sorry, I would have went with a different name because I'm immature. Go ahead.
And to be honest, this is my least favorite of the movie. I didn't really like this one because it wasn't scary. It wasn't really funny. It was just kind of weird. So you have like this couple that can't have kids. The wife's taking it really hard, especially on Halloween, because, she wants to have a kid that they can take trick-or-treating or whatever. But this couple doesn't seem to be normal. Like the woman is, I don't know, she's some kind of monster or something, right? She, she looks normal at first, but then when she gets angry, she has all these arms that come out, these red arms, and she...
Yeah, it was really weird. It was a very artistic type deal.
Yeah, so basically it's just about her wanting to have a kid, and so like the next Halloween, she really embraces it, and she dresses up as a witch, and gets her husband to dress up, and
kind of.
Yeah, as Hansel.
He looks like an idiot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, as Hansel. So he's kind of dressed up like as one of those little Dutch boys or something, and it's just really really weird. But yeah, so basically the whole segment is her trying to get a kid.
It's entertaining enough. Basically, you get the idea that she's a witch or something, and they're definitely doing the Hansel and Gretel theme because he's dressed up as Hansel and she's the witch, and so you're like, so is she going to throw kids in the oven or what? And as they're going through the evening, you can tell that he beckons to her every move. It doesn't matter. And she wants to kidnap a kid. That's it. Like, she is waiting for the perfect kid to snatch up. And there even comes a scene where you think they're going to get one, but the guy, her husband, the Hansel guy, he's a good dude. He's just like, hey, is this your kid over here? And she's like, what are you doing? And it's just entertaining. But then like, oh, he's going to get it.
Yeah. So she can't find a kid to eat, so she stuffs him in the oven.
That's right, because he tells her, oh, well, by the way, the reason we can't have kids is because I got fixed.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she's all like, that's okay. In the oven you go.
Yeah.
And then you do get the Hansel and Gretel thing because she tosses him in. And before we wrap that segment up, did you recognize either one of them? It's okay if you didn't. I did some hardcore research.
The guy looked kind of familiar.
So the guy's name is Mark Center. I've actually talked to him a few times. I'm hoping to get him on the show because I'm a huge fan. He was also in Starry Eyes, a small part, but he did produce it. But he was in Cabin Fever 2, which I loved. I'm not sure if you saw that one. It's a pretty cool one. And somebody else in this movie was also in Cabin Fever 2. Oh, one of the punk kids, Bart, the one that had the toothpick in his mouth all the time. He was also in it. But so he's in a few things. He was mostly known for The Lost, that Jack Ketchum movie. Did you see The Lost? Put it on your list, dude. It is amazing. Like, you will be like, he may have been a bitch in Hansel role, but he is a badass in this movie, Lost. So that's a good thing. And the woman was Pollyanna McIntosh. I mean, ooh la la, she's from The Woman. She's huge in The Walking Dead now. She's in Let Us Pray. She's in Offspring. So I think she's an up and coming scream queen, man.
Okay.
But even though the story was meh, I think that they did the best they could with those roles, and they did fine. But it'd be great to see them in something else.
Yeah. So the next segment is one of my favorites.
I'm already laughing about it.
Yeah, this was great. It's called This Means War, and it's like these two neighbors that they both decorate for Halloween. Well, the one guy, the older guy, he's been decorating for like 20 years or something, and he goes the more traditional route. Kind of like just spooky, it's fun. Whereas his neighbor across the street is this younger guy, kind of like a metalhead. He goes for like the gore and the shock value and stuff like that. But yeah, so they both like put up displays, and then the metalhead, he's playing this really loud music, and it's just very distracting. Like when people try to go to his display or his yard, the heavy metal music is really loud. So he goes over to tell them to turn on their music, and it just escalates from there. And they get into this knockdown, drag out fight. It's just, it's just crazy, like how much it escalates.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy for the sake of being crazy, but it works to the advantage of the story. I'm a sucker for James Duvall, the guy that played the metalhead, because he was also in The Black Room. And oh man, it's just, when I saw him, he does that grin when he's like hammering the stuff in. He's just like, yeah, he just knows what he's doing to piss the other guy off.
Yeah,
and they both had some amazing things. But I like how you'll read a lot about this movie, but I completely concur. It's used as a metaphor of like old school horror and then modern day horror, and both are welcome and both are great. But it's so funny to see them take it as far as they do, because they get into an all out, I won't say a fist fight, but they're like wrestling match, and they're flipping around. There's a scene where they even like go inside a coffin, and it like closes, and you just hear poo, 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 and it's like bouncing around. Then it opens like 8 seconds later, and they come rolling out, and they're still going at it.
Oh yeah.
But it doesn't end too well, Andy, does it?
No, they both get impaled on this piece of wood, I think.
And how do you read into that? Like, they both die, so who's the real winner? But the guy who likes the old school horror was on top. So does that mean old horrors? I don't know. I'm looking into it, but I'm partial to the old horror anyway. So. Oh
yeah, definitely me too.
Well, Andy, the next sequence we have, I really want to know what you think, because we have Friday the 31st, and we have a backwoods killer who's stalking the pretty girl, and he's dressed up like a Friday the 13th type killer, a little different, but he's chasing a girl who's dressed up like Dorothy from Wizard of Oz. And they have a nice, decent chase sequence, leads back to clearly where he lives. They're inside of a little barn area where there's a lot of weapons. Definitely a bad place for her to hide. She goes running, and he kills her with a spear. He launches this thing like 50 yards and manages to nail her perfectly.
Yeah, but that's not the end of it, because we get a little extraterrestrial visitor that wants to partake in the Halloween festivities here on Earth, and the killer, he's, kind of admiring his handiwork, and this flying saucer kind of like flies over his head and kind of stops in the sky. And this little green alien beams down, and he says, "Trick or treat." and he keeps saying trick or treat, and it annoys this killer so much that he just stomps on the little alien, the little green guy.
Splats him.
So then the little alien, like, he possesses the dead girl's body or something, and
yeah, it crawls right in her mouth, and you get this, at least to me, Andy, I got this whole Evil Dead vibe.
yeah, that's why. Yeah, I agree.
Her eyes are like glowing green. She's like,
Yeah.
only you can see my face when I do that, but yeah, she like launches up all fast, and she's like flying through the field, and she's not running or walking. Her feet aren't moving. She's like gliding. And I just had that whole Sam Raimi vibe.
Oh yeah, definitely. But yeah, the effects are really cool in this one. I think the little alien was like claymation or something, or was it CG? I can't remember.
I think it was CG. It's hard for me to remember too. We've went through so many stories. I gotta say, doing 2 anthology stories was not a genius move on our part. It put us in a lot of work, but this one made it really, really fun. Like, the movie itself is good, but just seeing that this movie wasn't afraid to be different, because this is the most far out story of the bunch, I would say. But it gets down to a possessed girl versus backwoods killer, and they're in the barn fighting, going at it, and we get an all out bloodbath.
Oh, that's right, because they are like chopping off each other's limbs and stuff.
Yeah, we get some decapitations. We get a chainsaw. I was pretty excited to see all those practical effects come to life.
Oh yeah, that was cool. And then, you know, the real winner ends up being the alien.
That's right. And before we run out of this one, because, you know, this is the theme of the whole episode apparently, did you know who played the backwoods killer? I was so excited when I dug that up.
No, I didn't.
Now, this guy, his name is always hard for me to pronounce, but you're going to know it as soon as I say it. It was Nick Principe, the guy from Laid to Rest and The Black Room. I see a tie-in.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Oh, it was so cool.
Nice. Yeah, that's a cool one. But yeah, that was a good segment. Kind of like you said, an imaginative one. Yeah,
and we're down to our final 2.
Yeah, so the next one is The Ransom of Rusty Rex. This one was kind of funny too, and it had a twist to it. You've got these 2 guys that, you know, they're planning on kidnapping this rich man's son, and then holding him for ransom to get the rich guy to pay them a lot of money to get him back. So yeah, you see them kind of parked outside this mansion, and the son goes trick-or-treating, and so they get out. And
alone.
Yeah, he goes alone trick-or-treating. Yeah, it's just like this little boy. That's what he looks like. And so they end up kidnapping this little boy and taking him back to their warehouse lair or whatever it is. And then they call the rich man and say, "Hey, we got your son. You know, if you want to see him, you'll pay us like $1 million or something like that." And the funny thing is the rich man's like, "Oh, you made a terrible mistake." They're like, "No, you don't understand. We've got your son." And he's like, "Nope." He's like, "I don't want him back." And he hangs up on him. And they're like, what's going on?
It's funny, Andy, because just hearing you describe it, it's so true, and it sounds so funny because the dad hangs up on him. He's like, "What? Did he fucking hang up on me?" Yeah. He's like, and the other guy's like, "Call him back." And he's like, "Okay." The way that they're amateurs just bleeds through the whole thing, man.
Oh yeah. So, so it turns out that these guys, these numbskulls, have kidnapped this little demon thing, and this rich guy, the rich guy told him what happened was this thing showed up on his doorstep like 5 years ago, and it would not leave his house after that. Like, he could not get it to leave. It was like always following him around and stuff. And so finally these guys kidnapped him, and he's so happy because he doesn't have this little demon like terrorizing him anymore.
Yeah, he's like, "It held us hostage, and you don't understand. Now I'm free."
Yeah. And he's like, what do you say? He says, so here's the only rule is you have to feed him or else he will eat.
Plain and simple, yep.
And so, yeah, these guys, they tried their best to get rid of the little demon. And
every time they kill him, he comes right back.
Yeah. So it's kind of a funny story. It's just kind of like it had a cool twist to it.
Did you catch who the dad was?
No.
The rich guy was John Landis.
Oh, okay. That's right, yeah.
So, and the funny thing is, wherever you see John Landis, you know somewhere you're going to see Joe Dante. So, hint, hint,
yeah.
Hint.
Yeah, so that kind of takes us to our next segment called The Bad Seed. And this one was interesting. It was like a police procedural, but it had about a killer pumpkin. You have like this detective and, she's trying to solve these murders, and it winds up being a killer pumpkin that's killing these people. Yeah, like you said, Joe Dante, he is the scientist kind of behind the genetic engineering that created these super pumpkins.
Super pumpkins.
Yeah. But this was another brutal one. Like, the pumpkin will like bite people's heads off and like even kill kids, and stuff.
This was like an extreme Goosebumps to me, which was okay. It was definitely needed. I think it was a really good ending. Finish it off with a longer segment that doesn't take itself too seriously. It had tons of cameos in it as well, including the guy in the beginning who's like carving the giant pumpkin. He gets attacked first and gets his head bitten clean off, and he's the director of Wolf Creek. So I was like, that's cool. And then his wife comes down, and Andy, this is going to mean nothing to you, but her name is Serena Vincent. And I'm like, oh, she's in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Dave's a nerd.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then we have our main detective, who I think was Detective McNally. Is that right? McNally? I think that's right. And she always runs into these two cops the whole episode. And they're kind of like the silly cops, And one of the cops was Adam Green, the director of Hatchet. And I was just like, man, they do not hold back at all in this. And Andy, this is one of the things I was talking about too. We talked about how the stories do tie in. And there's a scene where when he comes in the police station, he's licking his fingers like, oh yeah, some kid like killed his parents and he was covered in chocolate. And I'm like, that's from Sweet Tooth.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So it was kind of cool.
Yeah. So, we get the killer pumpkin to kind of tie it all off. But yeah, overall, this is like it was a really fun anthology movie. It was cheesy. It had more of a B movie feel, but it's definitely like another good Halloween movie. And this one is currently streaming on Netflix. So if you guys had Netflix, you can check it out there.
One thing I want to say, Andy, is when we did our first Halloween theme episode, you talked about 31. You're like, I don't know if this would be the movie you throw in the background at your party. And I was like, I'd go to that party. I think this one is. I think Tales of Halloween is a perfect party movie.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's lots of things going on the screen where you don't necessarily even have to have the sound on. You can just watch, have it playing in the background and just see some of the images are just entertaining.
So thinking about these movies, Andy, I saw Trick or Treat first because it came out first, and I had watched it 2 times. And then Tales of Halloween came out, and then I watched it. And originally I was like, man, Tales of Halloween, much better. More people, more everything. But getting down to it, I did the rewatch for this. And I think I just wanted to be different because the world loves Trick or Treat so much. It seems to make everybody's list. And I just didn't want to be on that train. But when I rewatched both of them, it was clear as day, man. I was like, Trick or Treat was amazing. And so I have to put it as the better of the 2 films.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, Trick or Treat's the more quality film, I would say. But I think for me, my tastes are kind of lean towards more of the B-movie type stuff. So...
Do we differ?
Yeah, I actually like Tales of Halloween better.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Just because it was like, I had more fun with Tales of Halloween.
Okay. 10 times more fun.
Yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed our little review of these 2 movies. I will say that this weekend I was like watching as many Halloween themed movies as I could just for fun. And so I watched Tales of Halloween, Trick or Treat. Let's see, what else did I watch? I watched this one called The Clown Murders. I would not recommend.
How was that?
It was okay. It wasn't really like a horror movie. It was John Candy. It was one of John Candy's first movies, so it was interesting to see him in it. But it was more like a drama crime thing. Like,
okay, that's weird.
There was really no murders until like the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes of the movie.
Was this one you saw on Tubi TV?
Yeah, it was on Tubi TV. It was interesting, but it wasn't really a horror. It was more of like a drama, kind of like...
Let down.
A little bit, yeah.
That's all right.
Then I watched this other one called Halloween Night. That one was by The Asylum.
I have that.
Okay.
But I never watched it.
It's it's like I guess people call it a Halloween ripoff.
Yeah, but how was it?
Oh, I liked it.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. I remember that cover clear as day too, man. All the orange, red, yeah. That's cool.
Then I watched this other one called House of Fears.
Is that a clown movie again?
No, well, yeah, it does have a clown in it, but it's not really the central character. It's one of these ones where these group of friends like sneak into a haunted house, and it turns out to be like actually haunted. So that was kind of a cool premise. But it's one of those movies that it could take place any time of year, really. It didn't really have the Halloween feel to it. I started watching May. Have you seen that movie?
May? Oh,
Yeah.
Of course. A few times.
Okay, I've never seen it before. I started watching it last night.
I'm a big Angela Batis fan, dude. She can do no wrong.
Cool. So yeah, that's just some of the Halloween movies that I've been trying to watch this last weekend just to kind of get into the Halloween mood. And so Dave, what's some of the spooktacular things you have going on Dave's Pop Culture Podcast?
Nice name drop. You got it right. Yeah, Dave's Halloween Spooktacular is the next episode that's going to be on Dave's Pop Culture Podcast. It's going to be probably close to the same time this episode drops, where it's just kind of an extravaganza that I came up with last minute. Just wanted to really do something different, similar to what we did here, except I'm going to celebrate cartoons. And so you're going to get some nostalgia things, segments, I guess we'll call it, all mushed together into one giant episode, and hopefully everybody enjoys it. And then as I roll into November, I will just figure it out.
Cool, yeah. I'm looking forward to that because you had kind of shared some of the details with me, so that I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah, so if you guys want to keep up with what's going on here at the Black Cat Shadow, you can find us on Facebook, Horror Amino, Twitter, all that fun stuff. You can email us. Our email is blackcatpodcast@gmail.com. You can go to our website. It's blackcatshadow.com. Find all of our episodes there. All the links to download them on the app of your choice, the movie store. But yeah, that'll do it for us. Remember, guys, to take a closer look at the world around you, and you may just find that it is stranger and more mysterious than you thought, especially in the Black Cat Shadow.